A really, really warm welcome to tonight's special event. This is a flagship event in the Florey's annual calendar, and it really offers a wonderful opportunity to reflect on and celebrate the incredible researchers that we have at the Florey, the incredible minds behind all the work that you'll hear about, and to really highlight the significant impact their work is having on people and community. My name is Jess Nithyanantharajah, and I have the great pleasure of being your MC for tonight. I think you can think of me as the guiding light towards the refreshments at the end of this event. But first, I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay respect to elders past and present, and extend that respect to all First Nations people that may be present with us tonight. So let's get started, and I want to start by saying a really big thank you to you all for being here as part of our Florey family. We have with us tonight board directors and governors who've just experienced and lived through a riveting, no doubt, annual general meeting, but they really know that the best part was to stay awake for this. A really warm welcome and heartfelt thanks to all our donors. The high impact research that we do here at the Florey would not be possible without your generous support. So we thank you for the vital contributions that you make to really advancing brain and mental health for future generations. We also have with us here many of our hardworking researchers and clinicians, the real people at the coalface who are driving the groundbreaking discoveries. And last but not least, we acknowledge those with lived and living experience of the brain conditions that we are indeed tackling at the Florey. We thank you for sharing your stories, for inspiring the research that we do, and championing the collaborative work that we do together to deliver the impactful changes that we collectively want to see. This year's Impact Showcase presents just a snapshot of some of the leading work that's being driven at the Florey. They're extraordinary exemplars of how the Florey is generating new knowledge and translating this impact into through impact into improved tests and new treatments. So we're in for an amazing treat tonight with lots of ground to cover, and I know we already started a little bit late, so we're going to have to make up some time. So let's dive in. Please join me in welcoming the Florey's Executive Director and CEO, Professor Peter van Wijngaarden, to officially get us kick-started. Thanks, Peter.
Good evening, friends, colleagues and supporters of the Florey. It's a great honour to welcome you to our Impact Report event. The report features stories of key advances made by Florey researchers over the past year. We are tremendously proud of these achievements. Please make sure that you pick up your copy of the report in the foyer on the way out tonight. Now, this evening we're going to be hearing from some of the scientists featured in the report, as well as some of the people that their research has helped. Other stories of research impact featured in the report include the work of outstanding discovery scientist, Professor Lucy Palmer. Working in collaboration with neurosurgeons from the Royal Melbourne Hospital, Professor Palmer is undertaking research on brain cancers. The team has discovered that communication between healthy neurons in the brain and cancer cells can support the survival and growth of the cancer. This discovery may pave the way to new treatments. The Impact Report also highlights the extraordinary work of Professor Anne-Louise Ponsonby and Dr. Hua-Chin Boon, who've discovered that exposure to a common chemical in plastic, known as bisphenol A or BPA, may alter brain development. Specifically, their research has shown that maternal exposure to BPA during pregnancy is associated with a 6 times higher risk of autism in some boys. They've identified a genetic factor underlying this risk, as well as changes in neurohormones implicated in brain development. The research team is now working on a drug that may buffer against these changes. In addition, Professor Ponsonby is leading global advocacy for plastic control and for efforts to understand the health hazards of plastics. She's supported in this important mission by the Minderoo Foundation. In the Impact Report, we also learn of the remarkable discovery of emerging research leader Dr. Lee Walker, Dr. Walker has found that a hunger hormone known as ghrelin plays a role in driving binge drinking in women. Dr. Walker's research has shown that sex has a major influence on numerous aspects of brain function in health and in disease. Her work is committed to closing the wide gulf in knowledge in relation to these sex effects. The report also introduces us to the research of Dr. Chris Bai, Professor Brad Turner and their wonderful team, who have used robotic stem cell technology to accelerate the screening of drugs for motor neurone disease. Excitingly, the group has identified a 3-drug combination that appears much more effective than those currently used for the disease. The work is proudly supported by Fight MND. And I can see Matt Tilley, the CEO, here in the audience. The Impact Report also shares the extraordinary story of PhD student Montana Waters, whose work as a carer for Jaylee and Dali, 2 girls with childhood epilepsy, inspired her to pursue neuroscience research. Incredibly, Montana is undertaking research on the genetic condition that affects the girls, and she's even studying stem cells from a sample generously donated by Jaylee. Montana's story speaks to the fact that brain diseases and mental illnesses impact many people. And for most of our researchers, the drive to make a difference for people affected by these conditions is deeply personal. The research impact that we will hear about this evening is made possible with thanks to a large team of highly skilled and dedicated professional support staff, some of whom are shown on the screen. Please join me in celebrating the wonderful team working tirelessly behind the scenes. So another group of exceptional individuals working to make the Florey flourish is the Board of Directors, many of whom are in the audience this evening. We are so fortunate to have your support. Thank you very much. Now, much of the work that I've mentioned has been made possible with thanks to the generosity of our donors. The Impact Report features the extraordinary gifts made by Carl and Wendy Dowd. Thanks, Carl. Whose generosity has led to the formation of the Florey Future Fund, a fund that will be invested in perpetuity so that the earnings can support talented Florey researchers. Thank you to Carl, Wendy and the many generous supporters of Florey research. So over recent weeks, we've commenced the implementation of a new research structure. The following short video will provide an overview of the new structure and what it seeks to achieve.
Imagine a world free of brain disease, where research has identified new ways to prevent conditions such as dementia, multiple sclerosis, and Parkinson's disease. Where new tests enable early disease detection, and where precision treatments for mental illness, motor neuron disease, stroke and epilepsy mean that we can all live full and healthy lives. The Florey is a global leader in brain research, and the translation of our discoveries into clinical care changes lives. Our research priority areas are dementia, neurodegeneration and immunology, stroke and critical care, epilepsy and neurodevelopment, as well as mental health. Each of our researchers has a main focus on one of these areas, but they share knowledge across disease boundaries. Their mission is to advance understanding of brain disease and mental illness, to develop better ways to detect, treat, and ultimately to prevent them. They do so through their expertise in a range of methods, including laboratory research, clinical studies, and research to develop new tests and treatments. Scientists at the Florey work with teams in Australia and abroad, advancing brain research to improve lives.
So 2025 is already shaping into an extraordinary year for Florey research. Many thanks to every one of you for your part in the impact that we're achieving. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Deputy Director Professor Graham Jackson, who will tell us about the Australian Epilepsy Project. Thank you.
So thank you. The last time I spoke here was in 2019 at the AGM, just prior to COVID. and presented almost 30 years of work that showed that we could, with advanced technologies and research done here, we could find the causes of epilepsy and offer new cures through surgery and optimised treatment. So we were proposing then to use AI and this advanced technology to take that further. And at that time, people were saying, well, what is AI? The world has changed, right? That seems only 6 years ago to me, but it's a lifetime in research. So since then, we got $30 million from the Future Fund of the Medical Research Future Fund. It's one of the largest grants that you can get, and it was to support this vision of translation for out there in the community. And guess what? We've done it. We've done the research stuff. We've not only found a solution, we've built the technology, we've enhanced the AI, it's all living on the cloud. We've created a national network with sites in every state. We've got 130 of the best epileptologists referring their patients in. We've got 1,000 patients already gone through, and people love it. It is a platform. The researchers love it. We ask questions now. We've got 1,000 patients instead of the 10 we used to look at. The doctors love it because they get a report straight back with all of this advanced information right at the start of the disease. The health economics of this is extraordinary. So we're at the stage now of really transitioning that to a brain health company that really does... it's out there in the community as one of the platform technologies, because with chronic disease and ageing population, we are going to be moving from bricks and mortar hospitals to population scale platform technologies that use data and AI. It's obvious, and we are one of the solutions that has got there. Now, one other thing that I've really realised is we deliberately brought all of this advanced technology to the first time you have a seizure. Normally, me as a neurologist, you don't get to see me for 10 or 12 years, and then you go through complex tests. So the average of a curative surgery in epilepsy at the Austin Hospital, which is advanced in epilepsy, is 22 years. And one of the aims of our platform was to bring that down to 2 years. Now, at every meeting we had when we were designing this, we had a lived experience person sitting in the room, and it was a bit uncomfortable having your patients and that, hearing all these plans and teaching them and so on. But impact is all about patients, right? And therefore, I'm not going to talk anymore, and we're going to talk about impact and hear the patient story. Thank you.
My name is Amanda, and I have epilepsy. I was not born with epilepsy. I was born healthy, just like my older brother and sister. However, when I was 9 months old, I had a viral infection called encephalitis. I started to have tonic-clonic seizures. I was taken to the Royal Children's Hospital, where I was treated. I was followed up until the age of 2 at the Children's Hospital to make sure I met milestones, and I did. So I was discharged and told I should live a normal life. And I did go on to live a normal life. I continued to hit milestones, and I did well in school. Here we go. When I was 23, I was working and studying in accounting. I'd just moved out of home with my now husband, James. Life was really good. We were going out to lunch with our friends in St Kilda one day, and something weird happened. I was told I was dribbling, and I was staring vacantly, and I had no memory of this. We kind of brushed it off, but it happened 2 more times at the restaurant. So I thought, better get some testing done. My MRI came back completely normal, but my EEG showed that I had epilepsy. This was a really big deal. All of a sudden, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. I didn't even realise what I was having was seizures. Life really changed forever from this point. I couldn't drive, I couldn't even swim alone. That loss of independence was so huge for me. I was really having trouble with study and work because the seizures I was having were coming more frequently. My parents were sure that this must have had something to do with the encephalitis as a baby, but we were assured that no, there was no connection. So life went on like that. Despite trying many, many medications, I was still having seizures. This was affecting my cognition. My memory, I was really, really struggling with my memory. I'd stopped studying and work was becoming a real struggle. This is my wedding day. Should be a really memorable day. I don't remember this day. I don't remember holidays. I don't remember large chunks of my life during these years of constant seizures. I went and even saw a naturopath at one point, thinking surely someone can help me. They took me off all my medication and I had my first tonic-clonic convulsive seizure. So no help at all, in fact made it worse. Probably showed what was really happening with my epilepsy, that it was just getting worse and worse. I thought that my life would just go on like this, and I guess I just learnt to live this way. In 2007, we welcomed a healthy baby boy, Lucas. As healthy as I look in this photo, I was anything but. I was having seizures daily, sometimes multiple times a day. It was a real struggle, especially trying to look after a baby. About this time, I went to my local hospital, which happened to be the Monash here in Melbourne, and I saw a neurologist that had a special interest in imaging, and he wanted me to have another advanced MRI. So I went and had this, and for the first time, they showed an abnormality. I had right hippocampal sclerosis. Surgery now became an option. I was really unsure. This is a big surgery, yeah, and I had a baby, so I wasn't really sure. But months went on, seizures continued. I wet my pants in public. I had third-degree burns from cooking and having a seizure while cooking. Things were getting so bad that I thought, oh, look, I will go look at this surgery. So I met with Professor Sam Berkovic at the Austin, who believed my encephalitis was linked to my epilepsy, and surgery could be a great option. So testing proved that surgery was an excellent option. It took me a while to decide even though it was an excellent option, it still took me a while to decide. One night, though, I had multiple tonic-clonic seizures through the night, and I suffered from postictal psychosis. This was quite terrifying. So surgery was now the only option, I felt. In July 2010, I had a right temporal lobectomy at the Austin Hospital, and it was a success. 12 months went by, and I didn't have any seizures at all. I was 32 years old. I hadn't driven in almost a decade. I could start getting my quality of life back. 3 years post-surgery, we welcomed another healthy baby boy, Hamish, into our family. I did have a seizure after he was born, multiple factors, sleep deprivation, low sodium, and I have had 2 other seizures since then, but 3 seizures in 15 years. I could have had 3 seizures in a day prior to surgery, so for me that was not a big deal. I've also gone on to complete a Bachelor in Psychology since this, hoping that I could help people like myself living with epilepsy. There we go. In 2019, I was very fortunate to be introduced to Professor Graham Jackson, who wanted someone with a lived experience to work on a bid for funding for the Australian Epilepsy Project. As you heard from Graham, we secured the funding, and I'm still with the Australian Epilepsy Project. Part of my role now is looking at impact. We have found that 10% of Australian Epilepsy Project MRIs are picking up previously undetected epileptogenic lesions. I'd like to share a success story with you from the AEP. This is William. William is here today in the audience. I'd like to thank you for coming and letting me share your story. Thank you, William. William started having events from about the age of 12 or 13. They were called dissociative events. They weren't given a name, they weren't given a label, he wasn't treated for anything. This went on for years. When he was 26, he was here in Melbourne studying at the at Monash University, and they were happening more frequently, up to 5 times a day. And he had his first tonic-clonic convulsive seizure. So he went to a neurologist who diagnosed him that day with focal temporal epilepsy and sent him for a standard MRI. This came back normal. His neurologist referred him into the Australian Epilepsy Project in January 2023, and 1 month later, the AEP MRI protocol showed an abnormality. He had right hippocampal sclerosis, and surgery was an option. In November 2024, he had a right temporal lobectomy, and he's almost 6 months since surgery and is seizure-free. William recently sat the entrance exams as he would now like to study medicine. He told me today that he got in the 97th percentile. So hopefully next year he will be studying medicine. You can read more about William in the Florey Impact Report. The AEP isn't just about luck, or it's not a postcode lottery. We're offering access at population scale. We now have almost 1,400 people referred into the AEP. I still have epilepsy. It's a lifelong condition. I take medication, but I don't have seizures. My cognition is fantastic now. And my hope is for the AEP to be standard clinical care. No one should have to go on and lose years of their life to seizures like I did.
So incredible. Thank you so much, Amanda and Graham. It's so powerful to really have ambassadors like you, Amanda, working with researchers to co-create and drive the change and impact that we want to see. So thank you so much. I think the AEP is an incredible exemplar of just how advances in neuroscience can be embedded into the healthcare platform to support early diagnosis and treatments and really have profound impacts on shifting the quality of life for people with epilepsy, as we've heard tonight. So incredible. So now, I have a question for you all. Who can tell me a story that involves a treadmill, J.K. Rowling, Google, and maybe a team ski trip? Well, I'll tell you who can. It is the one and only Professor Claire Parrish. Next up, I'd like to welcome Peter and Claire, who are going to chat to us about a major advance in stem cell transplants that offers new hope for millions of people with Parkinson's disease. Please welcome to the hot seat, Peter and Claire.
Welcome, Claire. So I understand that your passion is stem cells and Parkinson's disease. Can you start by reminding us what Parkinson's disease is and what causes it?
Yeah, sure. Evening, everyone. Parkinson's is really a spectrum of symptoms, but what mostly brings an individual into the clinic is the difficulty they have with their movement. This can be anything from a resting tremor. It can be difficulty in walking or initiating their movements. And these motor symptoms, we call them, are underpinned by a loss of a particular chemical in the brain. This is dopamine, and that loss of dopamine is what drives these symptoms.
So your team's interested in stem cells for transplantation in Parkinson's disease. Can you tell us what stem cells are and how these might be useful in the disease? And I think we've got a bit of a graphic on screen.
Yeah, we do. Many types of stem cells, and the technicalities are not important, but there is one class of stem cells we're interested in, and that's a cell that has the capacity to be any cell type in the body. And there's two major sources of these. We can either take, shortly after egg and sperm meet, a small cluster of cells within that unsurprisingly has the ability to become a human being, and of course any cell type in the body. More recently, and it's a Nobel Prize was awarded to Shinya Yamanaka, and that was for the ability to take any cell in the body, and this could be a piece of skin or blood, and convert these into a stem cell that we could then use to make a supply of cells for therapeutic treatment. So what you can see here is stem cells we grow in the dish in the lab. We can transplant these back into the brain, and if we've generated the right cell type, the dopamine neurons, we can replace this piece of circuitry.
Well, that is just fantastic. And I understand, Claire, that two recent human studies of stem cell transplantation in Parkinson's disease showed that the treatment appears to be safe, and incredibly that symptoms were alleviated for a substantial proportion of those patients out to 12 months, which is tremendously exciting. So do the findings render your further research redundant, Claire?
Luckily, no. It's a super exciting time. So we've seen these two trials come to completion. There's actually 11 trials ongoing still as we speak. We're just beginning to learn what the capabilities of this therapy is. So at the moment, we know the therapy works. It's not consistent in its outcomes, and we know that there's a lot of room for improvement, which is great for us because that's really what we're focused on.
And part of that room for improvement is getting the cells in the right place in the first instance, but optimising their survival and the connections that they make with other nerve cells in the brain is obviously critically important. Your team's recently shown that exercise helps with those connections, as can gene therapies. Can you tell us more about those?
Yeah, so the story really started. This is a piece of young tissue, so normally in development there's a certain environment that encourages these cells to connect to certain places in the brain. We recognise if we go and put these cells in the adult brain, it's quite a different environment. So we really tried to recreate that young piece of tissue. We first did this with gene therapy, so we introduced a particular protein back into the brain and we could show we could make these transplanted cells make many more connections. We also know that exercise drives that same protein or that same chemical inside the brain. So we actually were able to demonstrate that a simple voluntary running task could drive this piece of circuitry. And we actually got a twofold increase in the functionality out of these transplants. So it has really easy translatable capabilities when we think about the current clinical trials.
Fantastic. Really, the wisdom of our grandparents, really, that, you know, a lot of the science is coming back to validate that wise advice. So one of the big challenges, Claire, with transplanting cells that are not from your own body is that the immune system recognises those and then rejects them. And whilst it might be possible to create personalised transplants for every person with Parkinson's disease, it's really not feasible, too costly and impossible to scale. But your team's come up with an alternative strategy. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right. This is the Harry Potter story. So this is where we've engineered, together with collaborators at the University of Toronto, we've engineered a stem cell that hides under, well, we call it an invisibility cloak. So the cells hide under the radar of the local or the resident immune cells. So we've altered the surface of these cells. They can't be detected by the various classes of stem cells, and as a consequence, when we transplant them in the brain, they're not rejected.
And I guess one of the other challenges whenever you're putting cells that can multiply is the chance that they might form a tumour. What's your solution to that one?
Yeah, so we've additionally engineered the cells so they have a switch inside them, and we can activate this particular switch to self-destruct, such that if something goes rogue, we can activate this switch using a drug, and this will cause certain cells or the entire transplant to die. So a secondary safety mechanism in there.
Fantastic. So it's a real precision. So as an expert in the field, I'm sure we all would like to understand where you think we'll be with this technology in 5 to 10 years.
I think we're seeing the proof of principle or the evidence in the current clinical trials. I think there's, or I'm aware, there's a whole lot of activity running in this space, and we're just really seeing the early days of what we can build on here. Here at the Florey, we're able to demonstrate a number of significant advancements in this space, and we'd hope to see these really move into clinical trials in the foreseeable future.
Incredibly exciting. So I know that you're part of an international group of scientists supported by one of the founders of Google. Can you tell us what the main advantage of this collaboration's been?
Yeah, this has been a fantastic opportunity. So this is Sergey Brin, as you mentioned, the co-founder of Google. His mother at the time was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. His wife at the time was the co-founder of 23andMe. This is a company that was involved in personal genomics or sequencing one's DNA so that you can identify if you have a predisposition for a genetic disorder. Sergey discovered through this that he actually had what was called a LRRK2 mutation, which means he was at increased risk of developing Parkinson's. So the power of money, he invested $500 million into Parkinson's disease research, with the focus being this was going to be a collaborative exercise. So as scientists, we often rely on government grants that enable us to work on very finite projects. Sergey's vision was to bring together the greatest minds from around the globe and see us in a collective effort where the conditions were you must share, collaborate and accelerate discoveries into Parkinson's disease. And it's this type of money that will really revolutionise how research can move forward.
Tremendously exciting. So you've alluded to the fact that your research accomplishments are really a team effort. Could you tell us a little bit about your group?
Yeah. So this is the Ski Bunnies. These are the rock stars behind the scene. They work incredibly hard. Human stem cells are almost harder to manage than my 9-year-old daughter at home. We have to feed these cells 7 days a week. They really are a team effort to make this come together, and we're a collection of different expertise, from engineers to dentists to immunologists within the team. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks, Claire. I'm sure you'll all agree that the future's looking really bright with scientists like Claire and her team at the helm of Parkinson's disease research. So please put your hands together for Claire.
Thanks so much, Claire and Peter. I should say, now, if anybody else has a similar story, happy to hear it outside. But what exciting innovations and progress on cell therapies for Parkinson's disease, from being able to harness these stem cells into targeted cell transplants, leveraging exercise and potentially gene therapy to help those become integrated, to using invisibility cloaks, all topped off with, I think, a really important a reminder about team science, collaboration, and really the vital role that philanthropy plays in really being able to catalyse the big picture research opportunities to drive global challenges. So super exciting. Okay, so now it's my pleasure to welcome Professor Yogesh Lankadeva to discuss the incredible work he is leading in sepsis, which remains the biggest cause of mortality in intensive care units. Together with Professor Clive May, their team is leading the development of a treatment that could really change all of this. So please welcome Yogesh.
It's a real pleasure to be here. Today, I'm going to let you in on a secret. A breakthrough discovery that happened right here at the Florey that could change the way we treat sepsis forever. A therapy that could save millions of lives around the world. And right now, right here, you're some of the first to hear about it. But first, let me take you back almost 100 years ago to mold that was growing on an orange to an old petri dish, where in 1928, Alexander Fleming discovered something very strange. Mold growing on an orange that was secreting a substance that was killing bacteria. He named this Penicillium notatum. Now, fast forward to 1939, when two brilliant minds came together. Howard Florey, who our esteemed Florey Institute was named after this great man, along with Ernest Chain, ingeniously developed a method to extract, purify, and mass produce the world's first antibiotic, penicillin, to treat infections. From 1939 to 1945, penicillin was used to treat battlefield infections in Allied soldiers that was dying in World War II to save thousands of their lives. To date, it has saved millions of lives worldwide. In 1945, Fleming, Florey, and Chain won the Nobel Prize to what remains one of the greatest contributions to humanity. Now, the question we should ask ourselves is, after almost a century, is history repeating itself? Alas, infections have gone out of control again because antibiotic resistance is rising at an alarming rate. Sepsis, a devastating consequence of infections, is now affecting 50 million people every year and killing 11 million people every year. This is more than breast cancer, prostate cancer, and road tolls combined. 20% of all global deaths is due to sepsis, and living in an aging population with an increasing prevalence of antibiotic resistance, the annual incidence of the case of sepsis continue to rise. We at the Florey has been preparing for this global healthcare crisis for nearly 2 decades. From 2003 to 2013, a Florey scientist, Professor Clive May, together with a very prominent intensive care physician from Austin Health, Professor Ronaldo Bellomo, creates a clinically relevant sheep model of sepsis. This globally unique model gives us a window into what's happening in the human body during sepsis to find out how sepsis is shutting down internal organs like the brain, the cardiovascular system, and the kidneys, so we can understand this complex pathophysiological syndrome and develop effective solutions. Now, from 2017 to 2022, the rest of the world turns their eye towards a promising therapy, ascorbic acid that was derived from oranges again. And they were using over 300 oranges worth of ascorbic acid to treat patients with sepsis. Unfortunately, this acidic formulation killed more patients with sepsis. But just like how Howard Florey did with penicillin, we found a way to make it work by developing a first-in-class pH-balanced formulation of sodium ascorbate, which can be administered at mega doses. What's a mega dose? We're talking over 2,500 oranges worth of ascorbate going directly into your bloodstream. Now, as you can imagine, we were labeled as pariahs for suggesting such a radical dose at the time. But I must remind you that every dogma began as a heresy. What we needed was evidence, and that's why we provided at the Florey irrefutable evidence that megadose sodium ascorbate was safe and can be administered at these mega doses to effectively reverse sepsis-induced multiple organ dysfunction using our clinically relevant sheep model. Now let me show you what this looks like in real life. A patient, a 40-year-old man, a pharmacist at our Tullamarine Airport, contracts COVID-19 from an arriving passenger. To make it more complicated, he develops a bacterial superinfection on top of the COVID-19, contracts sepsis and gets admitted to the intensive care unit at Austin Health, critically ill and was dying. On ICU day 3, this patient stopped responding to all clinical treatments. The outlook is looking grim. We managed to get approval under compassionate use grounds to treat this patient with megadose sodium ascorbate, and shortly, hours following treatment, the patient's blood pressure improves, lung function improves, kidney function improves, heart function improves, and the patient was discharged from intensive care unit 12 days after treatment, followed by complete hospital discharge 21 days after treatment. This younger father is living with his kids happily after 5 years now. This was the moment in my career, in 2020, that I realized that we were not just doing great science at the Florey, but we are saving lives. Now, as of last year, we have finished a clinical trial in 30 patients with septic shock to show that this treatment is safe. It can reverse kidney function, it can improve cardiovascular function, and organs that were shutting down were turning on, like flicking on a light bulb. Here's another case study. Another patient with sepsis had a gut perforation. This is when the bacteria, millions of bacteria in your gut, spills over to your bloodstream. One of the most dangerous forms of infection we call polymicrobial sepsis. Blood pressures crashing, multi-organ dysfunction, and was facing imminent death in the next 24 hours. Treated with megadose sodium ascorbate and shows a remarkable recovery from sepsis within 24 hours, weaned off all drugs, and organ systems that were shut down started turning on like light bulbs. This patient is also now happily living with his 2 kids at home. And I want to really thank Associate Professor Mark Plummer, who is Director of ICU Research at Royal Adelaide Hospital, for being the treating physician, and also for his ongoing contribution as clinical lead for Florey's sepsis research program. Speaking of our sepsis program, I'm also very happy to say we received a $4.8 million Australian federal government grant to now advance our treatment to clinical trials in every state and territory of mainland Australia over the next 3 to 4 years. Now, the Florey Institute was named after a giant in medicine, Howard Florey, who created the world's first life-saving antibiotic. Now, here we are, almost a century later, confronting another global health crisis with sepsis killing nearly 11 million people worldwide. I strongly believe we are at the cusp of another breakthrough therapy that could effectively reverse sepsis-induced multi-organ dysfunction. We have robust patents in place, and we have spun out a company called Panaskia with a mission to take this therapy to every hospital around the world. And we are currently undertaking a philanthropic fundraise to take this therapy not just to wealthy countries, but also to low to middle income countries that bear the largest burden of sepsis. I want to finish my talk by saying we're not just talking about a treatment here. We're talking about a solution that could save many lives in perpetuity. Thank you very much. Now, I'm deeply honored to pay tribute to a giant in critical care, Professor Ronaldo Bellomo, whom we lost recently to an acute illness. Ronaldo was not only the most published intensive care physician in the world, but he was also a tireless force behind what we understand in critical care medicine today. To us at the Florey, Ronaldo was so much more than a collaborator. He was a mentor, a guiding light, and a true work father of critical care research. His vision and leadership was instrumental in the co-design of the clinically relevant sheep model of sepsis, and also in the rapid translation of our discoveries to critically ill patients with sepsis who needs it the most. We will never see his like again. But on behalf of the Florey, it is with great pride that I announce the establishment of a new award in his honor, the Ronaldo Bellomo Critical Care Researcher Award. This award will support outstanding national critical care researchers to share Australian breakthroughs at the world stage and foster international collaborations. These are values that Ronaldo deeply believed in. My dear Ronaldo, your memory will live through us. Your legacy will continue through the work we do, the discoveries we make, and the positive changes we enact on countless patients' lives moving forward. We will miss you dearly. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Yogesh. We join you in paying tribute to Professor Ronaldo Bellomo and the enormous contributions that he made to the Florey and will continue to make through the legacy of the talented researchers that he nurtured. And just to reflect what amazing work that you and your team have led, the Florey are right behind you as you continue to push forward these discoveries, build on the amazing community of researchers, clinicians, patients and families you've really been able to bring together to develop the first treatment for sepsis. I also want to acknowledge the efforts that you and the Florey team are making to really explore how this treatment can be made more accessible to everyone, as you highlighted, including those in the remote countries and communities of Australia and also those less privileged around the world. This focus on addressing health inequities is so important and really commendable. Okay, and so now on to our final story for tonight's proceedings. It's a real pleasure to introduce Associate Professor Wes Devathasan, who's going to describe a targeted treatment for tremors that's really transforming the lives of people with movement disorders. And we'll also hear the direct impact this has had from Richard Mulcahy. So please welcome Wes and Richard.
I'm in awe of all the talks that have been given so far, and I'm relatively new to the Florey, and I'm just so grateful to be here, having heard what I've heard today already. So look, I'm going to tell you about this really revolutionary new treatment and research tool, which is MRI-guided focused ultrasound, which is brought to you by the Florey in collaboration with Austin Health. And I'm very grateful to our patient Richard Mulcahy, who just had the procedure a couple of months ago, to be here as well and give his perspective. So what is the problem that we're treating? It's a condition called essential tremor. This is a current standard indication for this treatment, focused ultrasound. You can see that tremor in essential tremor can cause problems with dexterous movement. It tends to occur with action. It makes tasks such as writing, drinking, eating soup from a spoon, using food utensils extremely difficult. And in Richard's case, the tremor is moderately severe and it's still causing great impairment. There are many patients whose tremor is far more severe. And this is extremely common. So 1% of the general population, 5% of those over 65, there'll be many people in the audience who have this condition. And in 50% of cases, it doesn't respond adequately to medication. And in those cases, we can deploy an intervention to the brain into a target called the VIM thalamus. Now, the VIM thalamus, or ventral intermediate thalamus, is a small 3 by 3 millimetre structure deep in the brain, and it's actually a node in a brain network. The brain network in essential tremor develops an oscillation in brain activity, and that oscillation translates to muscle recruitment and thereby tremor in the limbs and in the head. And what we can do is to intervene in the VIM thalamus directly at the source of the oscillation. We can do so via two means now. So there's a conventional method, which is called deep brain stimulation. And in deep brain stimulation, we apply electrical current chronically into the VIM thalamus. And we do that by implanting a device into the brain. And an alternative way to deal with the VIM thalamus oscillation is to heat it up and permanently disrupt the oscillation using focused ultrasound. Now, deep brain stimulation is a fantastic treatment. It works extremely well. It is the standard of care to this time. However, it's a significant neurosurgical procedure involving incision of the scalp, drilling of holes, implantation of electrodes in the brain with a very significant recovery time and with substantial risks. And so there are many patients who are too fearful of this procedure. There are many patients for whom their tremor just really isn't bad enough to warrant the risks involved. And so this is the place of focus ultrasound. So focus ultrasound is a real piece of cleverness where we put ultrasound transducers on the surface of the scalp and we focus ultrasound beams into the VIM thalamus, converging on that structure to heat it up, a little bit like a magnifying glass might, direct sunlight. And no incision is required, no hole in the skull is needed to implant any device. And in doing so, we can improve tremor. So here is Richard's procedure performed at the Florey Institute. Christian Bullis, neurosurgeon, is attaching the apparatus to the head, which includes the ultrasound transducers and a membrane to circulate water so that the scalp doesn't heat up too much. And then you can see that we're not in scrubs. We sit outside the MRI and use a computer to acquire MRI scans in real time and direct the ultrasound beams to where we want them to go. And during the case, we assess the patient, see how bad the tremor is, and as we're doing so, we actually can thermally image where we are focusing the ultrasound beam. So we create what's called a thermogram, and we ensure that the thermogram is heating up the right part of the brain anatomically from the imaging, and it's reaching the temperatures that we need by applying sequentially sonications. And over the course of many sonications, we go from the sort of testing range to the lesioning range. And over a short period of time, really, we see an improvement in the tremor. This is Richard at baseline, just before we started to apply the sonications. And this is Richard's spiral and handwriting, just a matter of an hour and a half later. And so, as you can imagine, this is, very impactful from a functional point of view. And the great thing is that more or less, Richard is able to get up and he could almost just about go home. It's almost a day procedure, but they do stay overnight. But I mean, there's no surgery. There's no incision. The skull isn't open. There's no device that's been implanted that needs to be looked after, and the recovery is very rapid. So that's a conventional indication. We can now think about using the incredible research abilities of the Florey to now use this therapy for other conditions like Parkinson's disease, dystonia, epilepsy, and also opening the blood-brain barrier to allow medications to access the brain. It's a team effort. There's the neurosurgical team, there's the radiography team from the Florey, and we're very grateful also to the funders who've helped us get to this point. So over to you, Richard. Tell us about your story.
Thank you, Wes, and I would like to acknowledge the Board of Governors and the directors of Florey and former Premier, the Honourable John Brumby, here today, and other distinguished guests. Now, I'm not a medico, but I've had two roles in my life where I've been involved in funding research across multiple countries and publications, but I know of nothing comparable where a long-running condition could be eliminated so quickly. I was afflicted for more than 20 years, progressively impacting on my life, my motor skills, and my overall quality of life. Simple tasks such as shaving, buttoning a shirt, carrying a glass across the room without spilling most of the contents on the floor, even eating a meal due to the shakes in my left hand that is now steady. I am left-handed and typing became a major challenge, with autocorrect becoming my favourite feature on my computer. I arrived at the Florey facility in Burgundy Street across town at 6:30 a.m. on March 26th, and I was in my room at the Austin at 1 p.m, cured of this terrible affliction. I ate soup without spilling it for the first time in years. And within 5 days, I took up a role as chairman of a forestry organisation in Victoria. I'm indebted to Dr. Andrew Evans, my neurologist, who referred me for treatment, and for the movement disorders team at the Austin, including Dr. Wes, Dr. Christian, Dr. Arthur, Ben and Mark, and also Chris Kokinos and his offsider Ruben at the Florey Institute, and other technical staff from South Korea and nursing staff. I cannot overstate my gratitude to all of those involved in my successful procedure. My wife and family also share that appreciation. And Dr. Arthur, I don't know where you are, but I wanted to single him out because he and Dr. Wes are very good. They worked together for 6 months to prepare me for this procedure. And he also spoke to my youngest brother, who's an anaesthetist, and provided him assurances on the safety of the procedure I was about to undergo. So please join me in thanking these people. Now finally, if you're able to contribute to Florey, they do have a fundraising appeal underway at present, and you can contribute before June 30. Such donations are tax deductible. To give you an idea of costs, those MRI machines cost between $6 and $8 million. And the metal halo that was attached to my head costs thousands and can't be used again. If you share my view of the importance of these and other procedures addressing Parkinson's, dementia and epilepsy and other neurological conditions, your contributions will help much make that important work continue. If anyone has questions afterwards, I'll be at the reception. Thank you very much.
So incredibly inspiring. Thank you so much, Wes and team, and many thanks, Richard, for sharing your story and for also being such an incredible ambassador for the Florey. I think you can probably join me every single time I see and hear the results from emerging from these focused ultrasound trials. I'm genuinely left in awe. As we've heard from Wes, precision is the key, but the technological progress that's really driving these innovations is truly remarkable. And it's inspiring to think of the enormous potential the MRI-focused ultrasound has to offer for treating a wide range of movement and neurological disorders in the future. So the future is bright. So we have come to the end of the stories of how the Florey is impacting our community, but we couldn't finish without hearing from someone who has genuinely made a significant impact to the Florey, and that is the chair of our board, Martin Adams. Speaking on behalf of the Florey, we are incredibly fortunate to have a board that's so deeply engaged and committed to the Institute, and to have Martin at the helm leading right from the front. So please join me in welcoming Martin Adams.
Well, what a treat. I think you just got a flavour of the energy and the quality of the people, the professionalism, the dedication. And more importantly, we're kicking goals. It's so exciting what we're working on. And you can see why people like myself and other governors and directors are putting in our energy and time, and philanthropists who are supporting us, because this is so exciting. We're changing the outcomes of people's lives across the world. And the team that we've got here, not just within Florey, but in the whole precinct, and not just in Melbourne, it's across Australia. It's not just across Australia. We've got linkages now. You saw the slide earlier on with working with people in Harvard and Paris. We're working with people in Oxford. And you heard Claire speak about what she's been doing on her project with Parkinson's. It's a different way of doing research, where the large pools of funds come together for some really big moonshot goal and get people to work together in a collaborative way, which is very different from the competitive situation we've had with people competing for small grants and then having to spend another third of their year going for the next lick. It's just not a smart way of working. And we are incredibly blessed here in Australia, and particularly in the Melbourne precinct here, where we have over 10,000 scientists doing research and medical research. And now with this translation that you've heard today, working closely with our partners in the hospitals and the patients, and thank you so much for giving your stories, because that's what it's all about. We are poised not just to make a huge difference, but also put Australia on the map properly where it belongs. And in doing so, create an industry for us where the smartest people around the planet will want to come and work here. Why? Because this is the place where you're going to get the right people, the right support, the right funding. This gives opportunity for our kids, the next generation coming through. And how cool is it, to go surfing at Bells Beach and maybe go to Warren Ponds or anywhere else in Victoria and working at world-class level. And that's what we've got here. I mean, Yogisha's story is just remarkable, as is Claire's, as is Graham's story, and Wes, what you heard. It's just amazing. And that's just a small bit. So Peter's got the wonderful opportunity to harness these folks and multiply it out, because we're just a kernel. But one of the themes that we've been trying to show you is that we work very much in a collaborative way with other people. The problems we have are complex, and no single person is going to solve it unless you're very lucky. But by collaborating and getting people from different skills, and we've got a whole university just behind us here that we can leverage off, we can do some really cool things. So we just need to have a bit of confidence, a bit of grit. It's a tough time and everybody's complaining, rightly so. There's not enough funding, but we've chosen to look at it differently. We see it as an opportunity. How do we restructure the sector? How do we leverage? How do we get smarter? How do we work together better? And you've seen some examples today what that looks like. So with that, I've got all these notes, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to say I'm just so excited to see what we're doing. So thank you all so much for coming. There are some drinks and canapes out there. Everybody who you've heard today speak is available for you to interrogate or listen to or suggest, but also make some friends. Talk to someone you don't know. Find out who they are, what they're doing, and you'll be amazed what's possible. So with that, thank you so much, and see you all next year for the next update.
I just want to say again, on behalf of all of us, Martin, thank you so much for your leadership, your enthusiasm and your genuine vision for the Florey. So we've done it, everyone. We've made it to the end of the formal part of tonight. Now, as Martin already suggested, please join us outside to continue the celebrations and the conversations over canapes and drinks in the foyer. And please make sure you grab a copy of the 2024 Impact Report. I'd also like to draw everyone's attention to marked banners that will be outside, 5 of the Florey research priority areas, and waiting at these banners will be some of our brightest stars who are really eager to share some of their research with us. And so I urge you all to pass by, say hello and visit. And with that, all that's left is to ask you all to join me in thanking Martin Adams, our board and governors, Peter Van Weingarten, and all our fabulous speakers this evening for an outstanding Florey Impact Showcase. Thanks, everyone.